But when, you have another year?
One more year. Yeah.
One more year before he stands for re-election. Anyway,
You're
that's...
assuming I am.
Pardon?
You're assuming I am.
You can make an announcement here, you know. Maybe later, okay. But he doesn't get paid for that, which, thank you very much for taking that. He does work for the Franklin County Industrial Development Corporation. He serves as their Executive Director, served in this capacity since March of 2001. And prior to that, he owned and operated his office supply business with his brother Mike. Tim is currently in the middle of his third term as mayor, initially elected in 2018. And over the years, Tim has served on a variety of work-related boards: Regional Planning, Brownfields Committee, STEM, STEM Challenge Initiative, Workforce Investment Board, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, Business Alliance for Clean Lake and Regional Development Coordinators Vermont, served as chair for 2005 to 2008, and Tim has been a member of the Northeast Economic Development Association, served as the NEDA president and conference chair. He's been busy. He's also served his local community in a number of capacities: youth coach, United Way board member, Rotarian, St. Albans Football Association Incorporated, Vermont Recreation and Parks Association, National Recreation and Parks Board of Trustees, and Aldous Hill Playground trustee, received a variety of civic involvement awards, and continues to be very active in this region. He lives in St. Albans with his wife Denise, 3 young children, Mackenzie, Duffy, and Nellie, and of course, their dogs, Iris and Willem, and also a cat named Olivia. Would you please welcome Tim Smith?
Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it's a pleasure being here. With me is Elizabeth Nance, who also works at Franklin County Industrial Development. Elizabeth will tell you they don't let me touch technology, so I'll speak into this. That helps. So a little bit about me, as John shared, lifetime resident of St. Albans for the most part. Many of you would know my father and uncle. Leo and John Smith ran the Cornerstone Restaurant for 30 some odd years, and that's where I was groomed in my working career. As I like to tell folks, I filled beer coolers and put away the canned goods on a daily basis, starting in 4th grade. No child labor laws back then, I guess, but so I'd show up at the restaurant every day and fill beer coolers. So I was a strapping, probably 90 pounds, carrying a case of 24 bar bottles up the stairs and filling the coolers. And the story I'd like to share, some of you may know my brother Kevin, who owns Kevin Smith Sports Connection. So I chose to leave that job and move on to bigger things, such as a paper route. And so I got my pay at the restaurant was $3 a week, not to be confused with $3 a day. And then my brother, who's a year and a half younger, stepped into my position, and on his first day on the job, he was paid $5 a week. So it's been a sore subject within the family for many years. So I was hired as the director for Franklin County Industrial Development, as John said, back in 2001. It's been a great job. It's a job where I can leave. You can leave a mark on the community for sure. It gives you the opportunity to help. So it's worked out well. So I'll give you a little historic perspective. It was actually started in 1972. And a few folks that you may have known as incorporators included Ken Kay and Roger Luno, 2 of many. And it was based on the fact that the county was experiencing double-digit unemployment. So early 70s, it was 12% unemployment. throughout the region. And part of that was due to the fact that the railroad was beginning to downsize because you did have the interstate come in. So I'm talking 1972, the interstate came through, I think, in 69. So the railroad was starting to downsize, and they were purchased as well. And then you had agriculture, which was moving more towards automation than it was labor intensive. So between the two, and there wasn't really much opportunities. You had Energizer, you had Rock 10 up in, it used to be the pulp mill. People know the pulp mill in Sheldon. You had Sweat Cummings up in Richford, and the St. Albans Co-op. So very few opportunities. And Fonda, yes, thank you, John. Thank you, John. Fonda, yeah. I knew I'd be missing one or two. And we'll touch on that a little bit later, but yeah, so opportunities were limited for folks who may have been laid off, or so unemployment was high, and the group came together. They were able to work with Dean Davis to get some money to start industrial park. So an industrial park was started here in St. Albans Town and in Swanton. So those were the beginning of attracting new business. So, but with that, Elizabeth, if you want to go. So we, as I said, 50th anniversary last year. I think we've had some major successes over the years. And during our 50th year anniversary, we did do a video that I want to play for folks, and then we'll move on from there. We'll see it.
Governor Snelling wanted to have 12 regional development corporations and 12 regional land use planning commissions in the state. So Target Area Development Corporation was founded pretty much as a pilot.
We had a crisis going on. You know, the railroad was shutting down, and so we had high unemployment. People were being laid off, and people wanted to solve problems.
Governor Snelling's focus was to build industrial parks to bring truck traffic and worker traffic in and out.
And so you're taking that money and you're going to put it into infrastructure programs, industrial parks, and building roads to those parks and getting water and electric into those areas. Now, first up was a park that we had in St. Albans Town.
There was an industrial park in Georgia, and there was also one in St. Albans City on Lemnau Drive. So it was our job, number one, that we kept who we had, and number two, to try to recruit new industry to the area to create those types of jobs.
In 1982, we finalized our name to Franklin County Industrial Development Corp.
One of the features of Franklin County that I think drew a lot of industry to this area was our workforce.
We've been very fortunate to have a workforce that generated out of Franklin County, where we feel like there's a work ethic maybe above and beyond where we find elsewhere.
You know, I just see the grit of our citizens. Just knowing that a job needs to be done well. Just understanding that they have to work hard and they have to earn what they get.
We are basically an agricultural community.
Franklin County is the largest dairy county in Vermont, as well as in all of New England. The ability to continue to support agriculture with dairy processing, other food processing, as well as just manufacturing in general, does continue to support this area.
Workforce is deep in the roots of the trades and the agriculture industries, and those skills are very transferable into our biggest industry now, which is manufacturing.
We've got land, we have water and sewer infrastructure, we have a very qualified workforce. We're close to a major transportation artery, Interstate 89. We're close to Montreal. So you put all those together, plus the environment, Lake Champlain, recreation facilities that we have, and the quality schools that we have, I think it makes Franklin County a very attractive place for businesses.
You're comparing this community with a number of other communities. If you're not ready, they're not really waiting till you're ready. So you have to be prepared. Sometimes that means putting a lot of money in an industrial park and waiting for a company to show up as you're recruiting them, but you have to be prepared.
So that was always been the focus, and really staying in tune with the manufacturers in the region and assisting them where we could. Now we're looking at a little bit different model.
You know, it's really just trying to help these communities that are out there have a viable community. You know, every town needs something, and a lot of them really didn't see our corporation as a source for that help. And as time's gone on, they've realized that, yes, indeed, we can help them.
You know, workforce development, economic development now involves making sure we have the child care facilities for the parents to be able to go to work and feel safe and have quality care. Making sure that the marginalized people in our community that need additional support really get the training they need.
A lot of people are making career changes or life changes because of the pandemic, and some of that focuses on starting their own business. So we're gonna do some initiatives focused on entrepreneurship and try to assist where we can. The ultimate goal for us would be to take some of that entrepreneurship and have it grow into large value-added manufacturing. Vermont Precision Tools is one, which started here in the county with a 3-person group, and now they're at 250 employees.
I've found myself in many situations where I can recommend FCIDC. They have advocated for business. They engage with business. They understand what we do, what our challenges are, and they are genuine in helping to address those.
That's the important part of industrial development. It's not just, hey, let's bring a company and snap a finger. It doesn't happen.
It's really been part of the measure of the success that we certainly have had. And Tim makes an effort to really be involved and engaged with the municipalities, various agencies, chambers of commerce, who are here really to kind of support, the economic activity here and to grow it for Franklin County.
A director can be very good, but if he doesn't have a supportive board behind him, he's not going to get much accomplished. And I think that's the key here. All of the board members on Tim's board for the past 30 some odd years, they've all been excellent. They all freely donate their time, and they all have the best interests of Franklin County at heart.
You have to look forward. We're going to be here 10 years from now. We just got to make sure that we have the team together to carry on.
So we have a couple slides here. So when we talk about our mission, we were focused, our mission is on our old mission is on the bottom. And that was to engage in a process of building a strong and diversified market economy that serves the interests of enterprises, municipalities, and residents, and to strengthen our economy through the creation and retention of jobs and build a business environment suitable to host capital investment. What had happened throughout in recent years, we've changed this to the mission on the top, which is FCIDC is a catalyst for regional economic progress through community approach. So the first one was focused more on building that infrastructure and building the industrial parks, attracting new business. And as we went through a strategic planning process this past year, what we heard from folks was they were skeptical of us continuing to recruit new business to the area when, in fact, the existing businesses could not attract employees. And that's a big issue, not only here, but throughout the country, is finding those people that want to work and can work in the manufacturing field. So we reevaluated where our efforts were, and we focused more. Now we're doing more focus on place-based, quality of life, focus on some downtowns, trying to work with our towns to improve their areas that makes it a place where their residents want to live and bring families to and that type. So, do you want to move on, Elizabeth? So as was mentioned by Peter Cross in the video, these are our board members. We have a wide variety. When we build our board, we look at a number of different things. We look at where they live, what their occupation or experience might be. We look at diversification. So I'll just go through these quickly. Kevin Manhan is an accountant for A.M. Peisch. Leon Berthium, treasurer, and works for DFA. Evan Brandon is a sugar in Fairfield. Maureen Brown manages the Hotel Hampton Inn. Pat Delikas is a banker. Colleen Condon runs the Franklin County Rehab. Andy Crossman is retired. He was a workforce trainer for Pfizer on a global level. Lisa DeRocha is the assistant director of the Tech Center. John Hangel was the head of Mylan for a number of years. Liz Gamache, former mayor. Jess Graff worked for CVOEO. Leilani King is one of our new additions and youngest. Leilani works for Beta Technologies. Kathy Lavoie used to work for the co-op and was a representative in the region. Mike O'Brien worked for Vermont Gas. Dean Pelkey is a investment consultant. Carl Rosenquist worked for Wyeth when it was in Georgia, and Becky Stebbins is a banker as well. So we have a board of 18. It doesn't turn over very much, but we have some great talent on the board, and it's allowed us to be very successful. Go ahead. Our staff is small. We're 4 people, myself, Elizabeth, who you met, Amy Kimball, and then Paul Remillard is part-time as well. Paul was recently retired from USDA on the Farm Service Agency side of things. He's been a real nice addition. So we went over the history a little bit. Over time, we continue to grow. We do own buildings. We do have investments. I'd like to think that we will be sustainable with our income for the next 20 years at least, and we'll get into that a little bit. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Couple things that are always difficult. So when you think of economic development, the state budget, when you remove transportation, which is a lot of federal dollars, and you remove education, which comes from your property taxes, about 65% of the general fund on the state level is driven by 4 areas: your sales tax, your room and meals tax, income tax, and corporate tax. This amounts for about 62 to 65% of the state budget. My position has always been, without economic development, these will diminish and the operating budget will be much less, or there might be much less income for the state to focus on. If you look at the State House, and once again, this is my view of it, the legislature looks at mainly 3 areas: how to protect the environment, social programs that are equitable, and economic development. So economic development, as I said here, drives a lot to maintain the environment that we know that's valuable to us because of tourism, outdoor activities, etc. But it also drives social programs to allow for equitable opportunities throughout the state. Some of the drivers of economic development: job creation, quality of life, prosperity, improved environment, increase in household income, value-added manufacturing, and improved academic levels. So in Franklin County, we have the largest percentage outside of Chittenden County of manufacturing jobs. And why do we want manufacturing jobs? Manufacturing jobs are important because what happens is we create products which are then shipped outside the state and brings money back into the state. So it adds income to that circle of life, if you will, that we're bringing new money into the state all the time to help drive a number of initiatives throughout the state. So for example, Ben & Jerry's makes pallets and pallets of ice cream every day. They ship it out. That money is, and I don't want to simplify it to the point where all that money comes back to Vermont, but that's not the case. But the money does come back to the Vermont to pay for their employees, benefits, all that, and then that gets circled. Those employees buy trucks, they go to Ace Hardware. So that cycle of new money is always revolving throughout the time. Show of hands, do people want to share what products you think are manufactured in Franklin County? I will share that the food sector, value-added food sector, is our #1 sector when it comes to manufacturing. So if you look at all the manufacturers across the county, and I'm gonna take all your easy answers away, and then I'll leave you with the more difficult ones. But so you have Barry Callebaut, chocolate, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Perigo, which used to be Wyeth in Georgia, is baby formula. Franklin Foods is cream cheese up in Enosburg. We have 14 Star and Mill River make beer. I know there's missing a Co-op for one. All those are key for the value-added manufacturing and producing food products which are shipped out and generates money back to our community. Anyone else want to take a shot at what else is? Maple? Maple's very good, yep.
All the farmers?
Farmers, so the farmers with Co-op and Agrimark, so that is all product going out. St. Albans Co-op, I'll just touch on that quickly, and we'll get into this more, but agriculture is, I'm not saying a dying industry, but it's struggling. To give you an indication, in 2002, the St. Albans Co-op had 603 farms as members. 20 years later, they're at less than 350 farms. So farms have been reduced, and even throughout the state, there was another 22 that sold their cows in 2022, that's statewide. For every 7 cows in the state of Vermont, it equals 1 job. So right now, I think we're about 122,000 cows statewide. So if you figured the number of jobs and what the economic impact is relative to ag and the maple part of it, we're seeing a lot more with diversified ag. So diversified ag is selling pumpkins, making cream cheese, making blue cheese like Boucher Blue. Boston Post is making goat cheese, so that's value-added ag as well. That's picking up a little bit of that slack, but the farms, and even though we've lost farms, I don't want to get off on the farm discussion too much, but we're still making the same amount of milk that we did 20 years ago, because those farms are being absorbed by some of the larger ones like the St. Pierre farm and some of the other ones. So there is still that milk production happening, but you're just not seeing the family farms with 75, 100 cows is what you might have 20 or 25 years ago. So, other products?
Vinyl siding.
Vinyl siding up in...
There's a company, that's tubing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, raised tubing and dies.
Yeah.
So, Lucille Feed, so you have a lot of feed companies that support the ag industry. You have Pool and Grain, you have Blue Seal, you have Cargill, I think Borbo, and Land Lakes and St. Albans as well. So you do, K-Tech up in Richford does make vinyl siding. The tubing is raised tubing and die. Vermont Precision Tools, who we saw here, makes a drill bit for orthopedic surgeons. So they do the blank and they ship them off to another company to put the actual drill bit on it. And as we talked about Vermont Precision Tools, they were 3 employees back in probably 55 years ago, and now they're 250 employees in Swanton. We have a new business. You have a lot of maple. When you talk maple, it's not just the production of the maple syrup. We have 4 equipment suppliers, which is huge for this region. You have CDL, you have Dominion and Grimm, Lapierre, and Leader Evaporator, which just merged with H2O Innovation. So you have that's a huge part of the sector, of the manufacturing sector as well. what I want to go back to, so 12.3%, please don't do any fact checking on me, but it's roughly 12.3% of all our jobs in Franklin County are manufacturing jobs. On the state average, it's about 10.5%, so we're very lucky to have the manufacturing that we do throughout the county. Any other thoughts on other products being made?
Export Christmas trees.
Is there a Christmas tree dealer in, well, yeah, Bakersfield and Larry's Tree Farm. I'm not sure how much they export outside of the area, but that's agriculture as well. Also when I mentioned value-added food industries, there's bariatrics in Georgia, and that's, they used to make it was a nutrition bar that Oprah used when she lost all her weight, if you remember that 10 years ago. And she mentioned it there was a Jenny Craig nutrition bar, which Bariatrics makes in Georgia, and they're a Montreal company. So she mentioned it, and their sales went like this off the roof because Oprah said it was good. So they were fortunate. And I mentioned Montreal. We're very fortunate. You know, from you hear location, location, location all the time in terms of real estate. But for us, you know, Mylan Technology, its genesis was a Canadian company. The company was called Johnnigan, and Johnnigan made high-end liquor bottle labels. And they put the labels on. They had a screen, if you will, that went over that was difficult to detect. And then Burtech bought them, and Mylan bought Burtech. And the reason they bought them is because Mylan wanted to use the coating that they used for the liquor bottle labels for their transdermal patches. And that's how Mylan ended up here, because they were buying. And Johnnigan was owned by Canadian individuals. So we're very fortunate to be where we are. If you look at our, Barry Callebaut was a Canadian company to begin with. Peerless Clothing is a Canadian company. Bariatrics in Georgia. K-Tech is a Canadian company. And the list goes on. So we're very fortunate. And Calco, which is a new company in Georgia, in Swanton, is a Canadian company as well. So, and H2O, which bought Leader, is a Canadian company. So we're very fortunate. We have a good relationship, and that's where we would focus. We don't focus our energy other parts of the country when we have strong market just north of the border.
And you have a lot of run-amok is
Run-amok is another food.
People who add flavors to maple syrup.
And Run-amok is doing very well. So there's another food sector manufacturer as well. They're doing very well. Couple things here. The railroad we talked about. This is the Quincy House up in Enosburg. And then
Doesn't look like that anymore.
no, that's been renovated, but that was right across the street from the railroad. So go ahead, Elizabeth. Fonda John. So John was sad probably when Fonda was torn down and taken away.
I went to work there. It was 7 days a week, 3 shifts in the summertime.
Yep.
And in the wintertime, things calmed down, but it was just a booming.
And you have
300 or more employees.
You had the main building and then the warehouse across the way. A quick story on that for me. So I lived on Messenger Street, and George Miner, I don't know if you remember, George worked at Fonda, and George never had his license. His wife Edith used to drive him, but you could set your clock to George going to work at Fonda every morning. He had his lunch pail, and he would walk down 2 blocks to go to Fonda, and he'd come home at 3:30 or whatever it was every day, and you'd see George every day. But so Fonda was torn down. There was what we call brownfield issues, contamination that took a while to get cleaned up. But this is the first building to go in place, and this is the rail dispatch center for the railroad. For those who don't know, this is one. So when we talk about different sectors in the economy, technology is one of them, and we don't have a lot of technology opportunities when you look at throughout the county, but this is one of them. And so this is the American Rail America Dispatch Center dispatches trains. A lot of people might think just within our corridor, but they dispatch, I think there are over 80 80 short line railroads throughout the country, and I think there's even a few in Canada that they dispatch trains for. So if you want to think of it as air traffic controllers, but on a nationwide scale. These are, I think they're employing about 80 now. It's grown continuously over the last 10, 12 years. So they moved out of the old railroad building on corner of Federal and Lake, partly due to the fact that it was obsolete. So they've built this new building, and they're open 24/7, dispatching trains on a regular basis. And these are jobs that not many people know about, but this is huge for our local economy. So if you want to, we touched on dairy. You know, the former creamery here in the back. I believe the co-op used to be the largest shipper of butter in the region. So I look to you to Louise in the world. Yeah. So I look to Louise, my historian. So if I'm wrong, you can jump in. But yes, and they ship by train from the region. So we touched on this already. The maple products, the equipment producers. It's interesting. All of these are Canadian businesses. This is owned Leader H2O. It's Canadian. I was just in there yesterday. The interesting piece of this, and this is sort of a repercussion of President Trump's when he put tariffs on steel coming from China, and they're still in place. So when they order stainless steel for making their pans, they're paying 25% more than what Canada is. So it's making it very difficult for Leader to compete against these companies when they're paying 25% more for stainless steel. So I've asked them, I said, well, can you ship it into Montreal and then ship it down to Swanton? And it would still be charged that tariff if it's in its original form. Where it could change is, like for CDL, they can, if they reformulate the steel into a product, that tariff doesn't get charged at the border, if you follow that. If they just try to ship down steel, it makes it much more difficult. So we have a call into Senator Welch to see what the alternative might be. One alternative is you can make a foreign trade zone, and a foreign trade zone is where products go in, they get transformed, and they go out without paying any taxes or duty on it. So we could make Leader Evaporator a foreign trade zone. That metal comes in, and then they ship it back to Montreal for RO machine or reverse osmosis machines and that type of things. But it's sometimes when you hear about policy on the national level, how's it impact us? This is a good example of how a tariff and a tariff war with China is impacting. Because Leader employs 65 individuals. So when we talk economic diversification, we talked agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, government, education, retail, service industry, tourism, and technology. So this forms, so Franklin County is doing very well when you look at the state of Vermont. And part of that reason is we have diversification in all of this. Tourism is picking up more so than it had 10 years ago. St. Albans is becoming a destination. Not that we do a lot with that, but so our unemployment rate is 2.5%. Our population's growing. Unlike, I think there's only 3 counties in the state where the population is growing. We're one of them. Part of that is due to our location adjacent to Chittenden County for sure, but still we have diversification in all these areas. Couple figures you want to be aware of. So our county population is 50,000, of which almost 26,000 are working population. Of the 26,000, I'm going to sort of kick myself here because I'm telling you how great it is to Franklin County, but now you're going to say, well, it's not that great. Because we have 10,000 people that get on the interstate and travel to Chittenden County or Lamoille County every day to go to work. So we have 26,000 people that are working, 10 go south, so it leaves us 16,000. But the difference now, which wasn't there before, is the fact that we have 45 or 5,000 people commuting into Franklin County. So they're importing. So the work base is about 20,000. It's grown over the years. That wasn't the case before. Yes, sir?
How does the fact that there's only half as many farmers as there were 20 years ago fit into all this? Half as many farms as there were 20 years ago. Does this fit into this picture somehow?
Well, there's half less farms, but they've all been incorporated into bigger farms. So you're
losing milk that we don't need.
Well.
So I mean, wait a minute.
That isn't, so that your milk consumption has changed over the years for sure. There's no doubt about it, you know, and that's why they're looking at value-added milk products. So more yogurt, more ice cream, more cheese. I mean, those are the focuses of like DFA and Agrimark. Look at all the products that Cabot has come out with, right? All the cheeses, protein mixes, yogurt, popcorn. They have cheddar popcorn. I mean, Cabot, their diversification of products has changed immensely over the last 10 years. But when you say less farms, those individuals are being absorbed into manufacturing. Any manufacturer would love to get a farmer to work in their business, you know? Talk to any farmer, they think they're on vacation working 40 hours a week in a manufacturing site.
There's another part to this, though, that I'm hearing through the national news, that China is buying up agricultural land in the United States. For what purpose? Are you seeing any of that?
We're not seeing that. If any, the land that's being bought in Franklin County is usually Mark St. Pierre. I don't think he's Chinese. But Mark St. Pierre...
I'm a has-been farmer, and I'm worried about it.
Well, no, it's a concern for sure. But I mean, Mark St. Pierre is leasing land or buying land all throughout the county. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing, but that's what it is. So, so we have, we're fortunate because we have diversification. When we had the recession, 1 second, John. When we had the recession back in 2007, 2008, I think Franklin County's job loss was 1.8%. It's still a job loss, I get it, but our economy had the least amount of job loss in the recession of 2007, 2008. In the COVID time when things were shutting down, because we have so many food industries, many of them were considered essential. So you could stay open if you were in an essential business. And all those manufacturers of food were essential businesses. Their employees still went into work. They still got paid. So they were able to pay their bills. Speaking from a city perspective, our delinquency in water and sewer and tax payments was little or none during COVID. And I attribute that to a lot of the city residents were still working, whether it was in healthcare or manufacturing. but they were still in essential businesses. So we have the makeup of the economy in Franklin County, many of them are essential businesses. John?
We still have a passport office here.
Yes, so
How do we get that?
how did we?
Yeah.
Senator Leahy. So Senator Leahy, when you talk about the growth of our economy, Senator Leahy was huge when you talk about the immigration building, so the adjudication center. They had 650 people working until they closed, and now they've gone remotely, so that's impacts a few things, but they're still employed. But Senator Leahy, that started with 65 employees and grown tenfold. He had a relationship with city manager Bill Chaffee. They focused on keeping that operation here, and then they even added the Passport Center, which I think is 40 employees now. And I'm getting off track here, but the other thing about the Passport Center is 40 people a day come in to get new passports, right? So they sign up. They're in need for a passport. They're going to go on a trip next week. They didn't realize their passport expired. They come to St. Albans and they get it done. What happens is all 40 of those people and their families or spouses have to hang out in St. Albans for 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, they go to the museum. They have coffee. They have lunch. So it's sort of a captive audience when we talk about tourism, and they get a chance to see what the community looks like, and they more often than not they're impressed with what they find when they come up. So it's been the Passport Center has been a nice addition to downtown.
Tim, the Franklin County Airport is in the mode of expanding, and they've expanded a lot actually with the number of airplanes that are out there and hangars and everything. And Harrison Concrete guys are out there. So how is that going to fit into your economic diversification?
Bear with me. So I just want to point, so on the video, there's 4 individuals that, three individuals that many of you probably know or knew, and those were my predecessors. There was Tom Hungerford, Brian Suslin, Frank Coffey. They all held this position at some point or another, and the other one is Tim Soul, who was not on the video. So Frank Coffey, who now, so when you talk regional development corporations, of which Franklin County Industrial Development is, there's 12 of us around the state. So pretty much each county has their own industrial development operation. Frank Coffey, who many of you know, operates the one in Chittenden County. 7 years ago, GBIC, Greater Burlington Industrial Corp, authorized a study to see what amount of industrial land was still available in Chittenden County. 7 years ago, they came back and they said, you have about 7 years worth of development before you will exhaust all opportunities in Chittenden County for industrial development. Keep in mind what you're seeing on the interstate when you drive south, that's a lot of office buildings. It's not manufacturing. The manufacturing piece is going to, right now we're at 7 years, and we are receiving more calls now about locating in Franklin County because there's no growth. So to your point, we have an industrial park in the town. We call it land banking, so we're positioning ourselves for future growth so that if there are companies that want, and what Harrison's doing adjacent to the Highgate Airport is the same thing. With the demand leaving Chittenden County, if you will, these opportunities will be needed for the next generation. So but just to touch on the Highgate Airport is growing two construction projects. One this summer, I believe, Elizabeth, jump in if you, one, they're widening the strip, and then 6 months after that, they're lengthening the length of the airport strip to 4,000 feet, which will allow for larger planes to come and go. And the hope is that they will be able to, the businesses will be able to locate on the airport property to allow for aviation type businesses on site. So there's potential growth there. So, John?
There's some construction going on the south side of the Everready.
Yep.
What's going on there? Because there's no signs out there.
No.
Or maybe it's...
Let me hold that thought for 1 second. Let me get through some slides. I think I'm going to come up on that. So we did that one. So a lot of people don't realize the number of businesses that come and go, and these are just a few that I was able to jot down and over time. So I won't go through all of them, but Vermont Fasteners, we're a leader evaporators in Swanton, used to make bolts. Morse Hardwoods up in where Runamuck was there. You got Energizer, Lucille Farms. Vermont Brick is in Highgate. Swan Valley Cheese, Via Cheese, and Lucille Cheese are all the same building. Northland Hockey Sticks, Sweat and Cummings up in both wood-based products up in Richford. Wyeth and PBM, which is now Perigo, is still there, but they've sold. Fonda Container and Solo, Burtec. You can see HP Hood was here. That was years ago. Beacon Feeds, New England Container, North Country Linen. So many, they come and go, and they don't get a big splash in the local media, but those are just what's been lost over the last, and then many more. So if you want to go to the next one.
However.
Yep, so, but the other side of that is all new businesses that have come. You know, we've been through, Ben & Jerry's was here in the late 90s. Franklin Foods has switched hands over the years. Green Mountain Knitting, we talked about. Leader Evaporator, which is now, Leaders was here for 125 years, but now being purchased by H2O, which is more of a water company than it is a maple company. Med Associates, Runamuck is there, the Dispatch Center, the breweries, so, and then, excuse me, and then we have Beta Technologies. So to your point, John, Beta Technologies, which is, many of you have heard possibly, is that they are trying to develop the first electric plane, and they do have a couple prototypes. They're growing very fast. It's a very, it's an industry that is has a lot of competition, trying to be the first one to market. And Beta has rented a portion of the former Energizer building to develop the batteries. And I think most of you are here, I'm guessing, for the Beta presentation. So the Beta, only that portion. So what happens is anytime you do a new development project, you have to bring the property up to 2009 stormwater standards. So all the runoff from the parking lot, the building, all of that needs to be going into a stormwater system.
Infrastructure.
So it's infrastructure, right? So they're making that, you know, they're digging the retention ponds and all that to hold the water. So. And we'll just scroll through these fairly quickly. Just the co-op and the growth of that with, they did a $17 million expansion 5 years ago down in the city of St. Albans. Just keep scrolling through. These are. So this one here, Elizabeth out. So this is an aerial of Swanton. This is where we located Vermont Precision Tools. Vermont Precision Tools, I was on the job. I tell people I was on the job for 1 week, and Vermont Precision Tools came to us and said, we need to consolidate from our 3 buildings in the Swanton Industrial Park to 1. And they were having difficulty getting financing because their heating and air conditioning system what they needed was they could only fluctuate humidity by 2% and temperature by 1% because of the product that they make. So the banks weren't funding that because the system would cost like $1 million, and it wouldn't allow for the loan to value when it came to getting financing. FCIDC stepped in. We got 2 grants totaling $2 million. We built this building here back in 2003. It's a multi-tenant building, 90,000 square feet, which we added another 17 6 years ago. So we own that building. Vermont Precision Tools will probably be buying it from us within the next couple of years. But that building ended up going in that parcel by the interstate. Go ahead. And then we talked about our change in our mission focused on downtowns. This is the Ace Hardware store in Swanton. We received a grant to do some engineering work to allow for the business that was in there, BMTM Distribution, to relocate. The only way we could keep them in St. Albans was to build a new building. So we worked with a developer to construct a new building, and we paid for a portion of the engineering for that, and paid to a portion of moving BMTM to the new building, which allowed Ace Hardware to develop this site moving forward. And in Georgia, these are, when we talk about economic development, many of you remember, I mean, towns used to really focus on having a lot of infrastructure, having a lot of industry, having a lot of businesses, which would reduce your tax rate, right? And then Act 60 came along and spread it across the whole state for the education fund. Georgia had actually positioned themselves, as well as any town across the state prior to Act 60. They had 3 industrial parks. They had Perigo, Med Associates. So there's Morris Industrial Park, there's Arrowhead Industrial Park, and then there's a Georgia Dairy Industrial Park. So they were positioned beautifully to be a destination for homeowners because the tax rates were going to be so low. But once Act 60 came, that changed all that. In the current building now, John, you have Beta, Belly, you have Finish Solutions, which is a powder coating business. Main Street Graphics does printing and embroidery, and Peerless Clothing is using a portion of that as well. We talked about Peerless Clothing. We own the building that Peerless Clothing is in. It's 300,000 square feet. They probably will, they tell us they want to buy here in the next year. So what this picture does, this is the existing industrial park, and this is land that we purchased for future development. That has 8 lots on it, which has probably about 75% of the necessary infrastructure going to that site: water, sewer, 3-phase power, gas, electric, and the electrical piece. Just more businesses. And the healthcare piece of it, Notch, has a presence in, I may get this wrong, but Fairfax, St. Albans.
Yes, we have 6 clinics,
Alberg.
4 pharmacies, and 2 dental offices.
And a grocery store.
And now we have a grocery store.
Grocery.
And I couldn't find a good picture. I couldn't find a good picture of the 6th, which is why it's only, they're all 6, never mind.
Yeah.
No, kudos to Notch for providing what they've done.
And
Notch.
we have 188 employees.
Yes. Notch has been amazing. When Pam was there and the board, the pharmacies went out of business, and they'd say, well, we can do a pharmacy. So they'd stand up a pharmacy. Same thing when the store went out of business or was going to. They said, we'll take it over. So Notch has been huge as an economic driver for our region as well. Pandemic came, everything shut down with, except for, as I said, the essential businesses. We continued to work throughout the whole time. We worked with the state in getting out the programs as well as the federal government. So we worked with many businesses. What it led us to do was we actually had many calls from small businesses. We had calls from dentists. We had calls from retail. We had calls from accounting firms as to how to work through the pandemic. And we stayed on task and really sort of pivoted to help businesses during the pandemic. One of the other new things we've done is, as I said, we're focused on downtowns. You saw what we did in Burlington or in Swanton. I don't want to mislead you that we did all that. We just we brought money to the table to help, and we sort of pulled everyone together to keep the conversation going. Here we bought a building which used to be the Enosburg Pharmacy up in Enosburg. We have since purchased and renovated it. We have 2 retail spaces that will be full here in the next 2 months. We have 17 employees from the Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union there, so that's bringing people downtown to help with other businesses. And then we have 8 apartments above, so we've refurbished the majority of the building. We still have 1 section in the back, but this goes to our new mission of being focused on place-based economic development.
Now that you've got that taken care of in Eastburg, those curly lots for sale. I'm sorry.
Oh, Spavancure, yeah. Yeah, we've had conversations on that as well. We're not done with the Pearly one yet, so don't rush me yet. And there's a building in the old Masonic Temple in Richford. That would be one that exactly, yeah. One of the things, so we're focused, this is sort of my pet peeve, if you will, trying to get a welcome center in. We used to have one at the border. It got torn down for a variety of reasons. But we are strong advocates of the belief that there's, within an hour of the border, there's 5 million people. And what's going to happen if you've been to Canada lately, so part of the I-35 starts in Pike River and goes to Bedford. That's going to continue all the way down to the border. When that project is done, the expectation is that 30% more traffic will choose to divert from Derby and Champlain, New York, and come into Highgate. So the traffic on the interstate is going to increase based on that demand. We feel that if we can get a welcome center between the border and Swanton on the interstate, we can educate people about opportunities for restaurants, for destinations, for places like skiing, sliding, whatever the case might be, retail. We think we can bring some people into the county, educate them about what's available, and increase our tourism numbers, if you will, which will help small business. This is just a rendition of it. Keep in mind, we are the only thoroughfare into the state of Vermont that does not have a rest area. So if you go down to Fairhaven, you take Route 4 over to New York and Whitehall, there's a rest area there. If you go to Waterford, coming in on 93, I think, in St. Jay, Waterford, Vermont has a rest area. Derby has a rest area. Just after White River, when you get on 91, there's a new rest area. There's one in Springfield. There's one in Guildhall. I think it's Guildhall. So there's every thoroughfare leaving or entering the state has one except for us. And the ironic thing is that we are we have access to the most people within hours worth of travel than any of those others. Probably all of them combined. So we're focused on that. I think, so when we talk economic development, it's many aspects, and you're hearing about it. Housing is a huge piece of economic development. We have many businesses who try to recruit new people to come work in a variety of positions, whether it's professional or manufacturing on the line, and people cannot find homes, so they either don't take the job or they pack up after 2 or 3 months and go back to where they, or someplace where they can find housing and get a job. So that's big. Transportation is always big. The environment. What we find when we recruit new business to this region, we're never gonna, I say never, probably ever going to recruit a large company that isn't homegrown or privately owned. So I doubt we would have recruited Ben & Jerry's today. Ben & Jerry's may not be the best example because they're here because of the creamery, but we wouldn't get a Mylan if we weren't already established, because corporate looks for more incentives. They're not so concerned about quality of life. They want, it's about the bottom line. But when we're dealing with individuals who own a company like Calco that just moved to Swanton, that's one person owns it. He likes what Vermont stands for versus New York. He or she is not so concerned about what the incentives are going to be to attract them to their new location. They're more concerned about workforce, quality of life, and that type of stuff. That's what we see when we're talking to new business. The businesses that want a large number of incentives from the state, we can't compete with New York. We don't have the electrical rates that New York does. So we're at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to recruiting. People are going to come to Vermont or Franklin County because they like what Vermont stands for, and they like what we have to offer, whether it's education, quality of life, or whatnot. So when we did our strategic plan, we focused on all these items moving forward. Couple things moving forward. The Northeast as a whole is losing population to warmer climates. County population I touched on, but in the state of Vermont, there's 650,000 people in the state of Vermont. Right now we have 110,000 senior citizens. In the year 2040, that senior citizen base is going to be 180,000. So that brings up concerns moving forward about healthcare cost, how we're going to address the state pension. And then a lot of discussion is happening at the legislature now, which are focused on new taxes. They include childcare, paid family leave, continued health care, and then climate change. And I don't say this to diminish any of these, but there's a cost to all of them, and I think it's going to be, we hear a lot in our business about cost of living and being able to afford to live in Vermont, and depending what transitions out of this will depend, could increase that cost of living piece, which may lead to more people moving out of state. But
Tim, there's also a cost for not addressing these things too.
no, there's no doubt.
That would happen.
Yeah, no, childcare is an issue for people going back to work, right? We hear that if a childcare program was put in place, the word is that you would have 2,000 people automatically re-enter the workforce. So that is one. Paid family leave.
If you look at your aging population, somebody's got to take care of them. So, man, the burden falls on the family. That's somebody who may not be able to be in the workforce. So there is that's a cost.
Yeah, no, there's gonna be a lot of challenges moving forward for sure on all of these. and how do we address them for a small state, so.
Maybe we need to get an adult diaper manufacturer.
What's that?
Adult diaper manufacturer.
Right.
What are you doing to address the housing shortage?
So the region received a grant through the COVID money, ARPA money, to, it's called Working Communities Challenge, and there's been an individual hired to focus just on the housing aspect of it. So he's been on board for about a year. The position's 3 years to begin with, could go longer, but he is working with collaboration of partners like ourselves, like regional planning, what else is on that? CVOEO, there's a number of partners, and I'm not saying this will be the outcome, but one could be a housing commission for the entire county. There are other counties that have regional housing commissions focused on just that, creating housing opportunities. So that could be one aspect, but that's the main focus for this region. The gentleman's name is Barry Lamke, and he is focused on the housing discussion and moving it forward. Louise?
Is there any collaboration between your agency and the schools, particularly the tech centers? Well, I think the academic schools too. So that we're producing students who have the abilities to meet what these companies are looking for in the workforce.
Yeah, you did a good job, Louise, setting that up. Thanks. I owe you a meal. So to Louise's point, this is another piece that we've harped on for years, and that is over the years, 10 years ago, 6 years ago, the school's focus in many cases was getting kids into college. College is not ideal for everyone, and I think the guidance departments in the 5 high schools in Franklin County have finally come to the realization it's as much about career education as it is getting an individual into college. So they've really been focused on getting kids educated about what the opportunities are. Years ago, Kathy Lavoie, who we saw in the video, had funding from the state to be an internship coordinator, and she would go into all schools. And Kathy, in 6 years, placed 500 graduating students in businesses. And I don't mean to diminish Hannaford's, but it wasn't bagging groceries. I mean, they were working at Ben & Jerry's, they were working at Med Associates, they were working at the hospital, they were working a number of jobs. Many of them have continued in those jobs. Many of them have, this is 6 years ago, have since been married, raising a family. But that was due to the fact that Kathy got into the schools, educated the kids about what the opportunities are, because I think for the most part, people don't realize what the opportunities are when it comes to work and work opportunities. That has since gone away, but the schools have, Franklin County Industrial Development, worked hard to get BFA Career Center. So now, if you think back to college, when you were getting ready to graduate, you went into the Career Center and there was jobs posted on the bulletin board. So there's those type of things. That's the direction we're trying to help the schools to move that conversation forward. So what has since happened is all 5 high schools have come on board together. So the 5 being Richford, Enosburg, BFA St. Albans, Fairfax, and MBU. So there's a software program where companies go in and list what their jobs are. And it doesn't have to be just jobs. It can be an internship, it could be a shadowing opportunity, it could be a job. And then as kids in school, they work with their guidance counselors and they direct them to that listing, and they go down through and say, oh, woodworking, that I'm really interested in woodworking, or construction, or heavy equipment. So there's going to be a program in place that's just rolling out now, where kids can see what's available in the region. Guidance counselors or the co-op coordinators at the tech center can direct them towards those, and hopefully build a connection and be hired. Building trades at the tech center, I don't know what Cold Hollow is, but here is maxed out, 110 individuals doing building trades. The demand is there in the trades, and the demand is there for heavy equipment operator, electricians. We all know we all have hard times getting them. So the schools have transitioned, really focused more on career education, or more so than it was, and it's a conversation that I think is only going to get better moving forward. So.
Tim, with the thousands of Vermont workers who seemingly vanished during the pandemic, any recent sightings of these folks or folks in finding them?
That's the question, right, Richard? Where did everyone go? And you did have some that chose to retire. Some have moved, but I don't know the answer to that. No one does. It's you've got businesses. At one time, Barry Callebaut was looking for 40 individuals to work. A lot of people don't want to work second and third shift, which our manufacturers do. I mean, Barry Callebaut is 3 shifts, Ben & Jerry's, Mylan. I mean, it's just hard. People are more selective in the position that they use, or they do. So I don't know the answer. I don't know where they went.
So Tim, is there anybody who's making an effort to find out where they went? Is the state doing anything I mean, this would be heavy-duty survey work.
Yeah.
Contacting former employees and saying, are you working? If not, why?
Yeah, I don't.
That would be helpful to know why.
I don't know if anyone's doing that. I don't think so. But I would share, so this was an initiative, it's called the Vermont Futures Program. And this was probably done 6 years ago, but it's still active. And what they say is, new demand for jobs every year, and this was pre-COVID, was 19,000 positions. So we had to fill 19,000 jobs, and it could be for new job creation, it could be for retirement, could be the case. What the data said was we had 3,500 high school grads coming out of school that could potentially fill that gap, and we had 4,500 coming out of college for a total of 8,000. So the gap that the annual net new workforce needed on an annual basis was 11,000. So that was even in place beforehand. Keep in mind that school population has dropped 30,000 in the last 20 years. It was 120,000, it's down to 90,000 now. So I don't know the answer to that, Richard, but the problem was present even before COVID.
I was reading or heard that some people, when COVID began, who were in entry-level jobs, took that opportunity to increase, to better their education, and are working in other areas, maybe even out of state, but that there is some of that population that did that.
That piece, and a lot of people left the service industry, right? Hospitality, waiters or waitresses or bars have chosen to move, to your point, get a different education or take a chance on a different job, for sure.
There's also the increase in remote workers. You can sit in Richford and work for a California company.
Right. I could go on all day, but
One more question, anybody?
Yeah, what about immigrants and that we have allowed them to work in Vermont or in Arizona? I mean, that's obvious where the world is coming to America. People are coming to Vermont because of the environment being so hazardous everywhere, Montana to California. So what are we doing to address that?
not much in Franklin County. So when you had the Afghans coming over and others, there's 2 systems that are set up in the state of Vermont. They're the relocation systems. There's one in Rutland. There's 3 actually. There's one in Rutland, one in Burlington, and one in Brattleboro. And they have found ways to create a a system where they can administer help to those individuals as they come to the region. They can find housing, they can help with food, they can help with medical expenses and finding jobs. Outside of those areas, the state will not endorse St. Albans or Franklin County if you don't have one of those relocation organizations set up, and there's multiple individuals that have to work that. Some of the theories are you could go out and you could recruit, you could invite a family of Afghans to come to St. Albans, get them a job. What they have found over the years that those individuals or those populations will not stay here for an extended period of time. They want to have a nucleus of familiar individuals, familiar resources, what's the word? Just familiar with what their cultural. Thank you. That's So their culture. So that's why Winooski has a large population in that area, because they have the cultural support with families and others. So until the state, I don't have the resources to attract, although a number of them are working at Peerless Clothing. They take a bus up from Winooski and work at Peerless, and then they take a bus home. But one of the main reasons is the state will not endorse an area like St. Albans or St. Johnsbury or others without having that network in place, and it's not cheap to have that network in place.
The other piece that they need is public transportation.
Public transportation. So,
you don't have that, these people don't drive.
so to that point, you have many of the new Americans that come to Peerless to work are employed by a temp service. So the temp service picks them up on a daily basis, drives them to St. Albans, they go to work and they drive them home. Peerless would love to make, because they're excellent employees, Peerless would love to make them full-time employees. As soon as they do that, the transportation's gone. So the temp service will say, well, you're not one of our temp employees, now you're on your own, figure out how to get to Peerless. So they stay as a temp employee for months on end until maybe one of their friends or colleagues gets a license and can start transporting them. But if they were to go to a full-time employee, the benefits would be better, the pay would be better, but they don't have transportation. And transportation was on our wheel up there as well. Well, I don't disagree with that. It's just a matter of bearing down and making them work.
I think that's very important that we look at immigrants, because we have an aging population throughout the country, an aging population, a decrease in the birth rate. So somebody has to be doing these jobs, and I hate to think it's going to be artificial intelligence that's going to take over so many of these jobs that we need people for.
No, you're exactly right, Louise. But when you talk about artificial intelligence, I mean, we're starting to see it. Go into a Maple Fields or go into a Walmart or a Hannaford's, and it's all self-checkout. Or you go to Ben and Jerry's, and they have two robots stacking ice cream on pallets. I mean, you're going to see more and more of it because of the lack of a workforce. So. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.